walls moved to the corner because the farmers need to get back in on their farms. I put together a 300 farmer co-op up there, worked with the Premier of Manitoba, Gary Philman, and that's the governor of Manitoba. So I worked with those government agencies up there. I also worked in Mexico, so you know, I have experience there where I had to get a permit. You know, I had to get a work permit to go to Canada, I had to get a work permit to go to Mexico, and I also worked in Europe. So, and I worked all around the United States when I was with Georgia Pacific as an engineer. I worked in, I had a big division. I had plants in Wisconsin and Virginia and South Carolina and Georgia and California and Oregon. And so you know, I was on the airplane all the time. And I also had a plant in Copenhagen, Germany. So I'd go over there. So I have a lot of international business experience. I also, in my education, I started off at the bottom. Started off as a laborer. I went through a millwright apprenticeship, electrical apprenticeship, I hold an Oregon electrical supervisor's license, a certified welder, MIG and TIG. I have an associate degree in apprenticeship trades. I have a bachelor of science degree from Linfield. And then I went on and got a presidential key executive MBA at Pachyderm University. Why did I go there? Why did I go to Malibu and get a degree there? Well, Pepperdine is ranked #1 in the United States in ethics. I could have gotten a degree in any place in Oregon, of course. But I went there because I wanted to learn about mergers and acquisitions. I also wanted to learn about business, and being in the presidential key executive MBA at 3 levels: the regular MBA, the executive MBA, and presidential key executive MBA, where they only take 20 students. And you do an overseas project, and what I did on my financial module on Wall Street in the South Tower of the World Trade Center, one of my classmates had all the towers in the North Tower that you saw tumbling down when you see, you know, after the attack. So you work with 20 people that are very, you know, very successful CEOs and presidents of companies. Now they come from everywhere. They come from New Jersey. I had classmates from New Jersey and Florida, Texas, and New Mexico, California. I was the only one from Oregon. So I got exposed to some real high-ranking business people, which is part of who I am. And I'm telling you all this is because what we need today is we need jobs. And my opponents in this race, both the Democrat and the Republican, are good people. I don't have any problem with any of them. They've just done the best job they can, and that's not good enough today. Because if we had low unemployment, things were percolating, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you, because I really love what I do. I have a great family. My sons are 13 and 15. I have a fabulous wife who's very, very successful in her own right. She was a professor of architecture. Now she's an attorney. So she's very rare to have both of those kind of degrees. But I put her through 7 years of her 11-year education cycle at the university. And when she decided to go become a lawyer, our boys were 3 and 5. She commuted every day from Salem to Lewis and Clark. And I had the opportunity of taking care of our sons. And I was doing mergers and acquisitions at home, and so they were 3 and 5, so they thought I was king. Everything I said was just wonderful. Now they're 13 and 15, they don't want anything to do with me. They just want money and transportation, and when I pick them up, I'm not supposed to talk to their friends, I'm not supposed to acknowledge them. I should just wear a butler's hat or something. But anyway, that's life, and I guess as I understand, they'll come back when they're about 30 years old. Okay, again. So anyway, that's kind of life as it is, as we know it, right? So anyway, I'm a very blessed man, and I have this opportunity to stand in front of you again. I did this in 2010. I've been thinking about running in this office since 2007. I have prepared myself, and I'm willing to debate anybody anytime, talk about any issue, and like I said, they can ask any question. I'll give them any answer they want, or what I want. But I don't have a lot of, I have a great group around me, but you know, I don't want any handlers, so to speak. You know, I'm not about that. I'm about you folks. You know, I'm not about being controlled. My wife's the one that can control me. I get lectured about that every day, but But the thing about it is that I'm from Main Street like you are. And I understand what we're going through like you do. Because I've lived this life. You know, I spent 25 years in the timber industry. The timber industry is one of the most environmentally progressive, correct industries in the history of mankind. Now let me explain that. Wood products have been around since before Noah built the ark. It will be here after Nike's gone, and after Intel's gone, and after Starbucks is gone. Wood will still be here. And we utilize everything out of the tree today but the shade. Now, if you remember way back when, and when I used to come to Oregon, and when I came back to Vietnam in '71, I'd come up to Oregon and I would see the old wigwam burners. Remember those old trash burners? They would burn all the waste wood. And you drive up here at night around I-5, it looked like just a bunch of little campfires going on. It was actually beautiful. But that went away, and I asked a gentleman asked me here a couple weeks ago, he said, you know, that went away because the EPA told them they couldn't do that anymore. I said, no, you're wrong. Absolutely wrong. EPA wasn't around when they got those things shut down. The reason they shut them down is because particle board was invented in the Pacific Northwest. And that waste wood became the feeder material for the particle board industry. So there again, they took a waste that came off of that, and they made a valuable product. And they created jobs and put more people to work. They also, you know, since I was with GP, we also have had what we call hybrid trees, and we've been planting those for 60, 70 years. And we have more trees today in Oregon than we had over 100 years ago. Now those trees, the life cycle on those trees, they harvest them between 30 and 60 years. Because they want the same thing that Lowe's and Costco and Home Depot wants. They want inventory turns. Because they're good business people. We do not use old growth, and let me say something about old growth. Old growth is not a tree, it's a forest. But we don't utilize that anymore because the mills have been completely retooled. And they don't take that big log. And besides, the big log doesn't have the quality that the hybrid trees have today. So that's what we want. So when you hear this argument about the industry wants to kill or cut old growth, that's not true. Now occasionally an old growth tree will fall down. There's a couple mills here in Oregon, I think there's maybe just one now, that can handle that old growth. But it's a tree that's already on the ground. Or because they cut a road, they had to remove a tree. And that's the only one that ever uses it. But it's a single tree, it's not a forest. So when you hear the politicians talk about that, they don't know what they're talking about. And I can guarantee you one thing, that I have more experience and knowledge about the timber industry than not only all 5 of our city congressmen, but the 2 senators are sitting up there too. So I think we need a strong voice going to Washington, D.C., because that has historically been the economic driver of this state, timber. And it will continue to be. And the reason I want, and I said this before, if I ever met the President of the United States, this is exactly what I would say to him. Mr. President, since the federal government owns 60% of our timberland, Mr. President, get your federal government out of Oregon timberland. That belongs to the people, the city, and the counties of Oregon. We need to return that back and let them manage it. Let the counties manage that, because that's how we fund our schools, and our police, and our roads, and our fire departments. And one of my bullet points here, the one number 6, it says improve Oregon's suffering education system, including reinstatement of trade school education. I want trade school education back in the mid-highs and the high school. Just last year, my 91-year-old mother, we had to put her in a rest home, and she's just a phenomenal person, and I love her dearly, but both my brothers, I have one older and one younger, said, Fred, why don't you take your cedar chests back with you, back to Oregon, that you made in high school. I made 2 of them. One pure cedar, and the other one black walnut with cedar lime. I made them for my mother. And those things, those cedar chests today are exactly the way I made them in 1967 as a senior in high school. So I had a couple brass plates made to put on the inside of the door because now they belong to my wife. And then when my wife is gone, then they belong to my oldest son and my youngest son. And then now they've become a family heirloom, right? They'll live a while until somebody sells them in a garage sale. But I'll come back and get them. Believe me, I'll hunt them. I'll be inside that. Every time I open it, I'll jump up, you know, like a jacket on my foot. So anyway, but that's what I did. I forgot about that. I forgot about that. And you know, and I spent 25 years in the timber industry. Is it because I made the cedar chest? I don't know. You know, I can't tell you, but I love working with wood. You know, so that's where I'm coming from. We need, you know, teachers need to have their retirement. State workers need to have their retirement. State workers need to get off of furlough. Everybody needs to have their retirement. We got to get everybody working. And I'm all about the middle income folks. We need to help them. If we raise them, we raise everybody. And that's what I want to do. We can do that with our natural resources. Good management. We want clean air, clean water, and we want a safe habitat, but we also want to be able to use what God has given us. And believe me, these mountains are not going to grow corn. God gave us this country to grow trees. And we grow the best trees in the whole wide world. So for us not to be able to own our own land, for our own people to manage that, and we've got fabulous universities with fabulous young people that are well educated and know about the economics, they understand the clean air and the clean water and the habitat. They understand that. My sons understand. I can't leave my driveway without putting my seatbelt on. I got to recycle everything. And that's okay. That's okay. Because it's just making the world a little better place. And so anyway, that's kind of me in a nutshell there. And I also want to just leave you this with wood products. Wood products is not a cradle-to-grave product, it's a cradle-to-cradle product. Because if we got done using that, we can grind it up, make MDF out of it, we can make wood pellets out of it, we can make bedding for chickens or horse. So, you know, it is a product that I love. And by the way, yeah, I could take a 2x4 and throw it on the ground, and then we go back to the earth, but I could throw one of these things on the ground, and it's going to contaminate the ground. So who's more environmentally correct? Wood products industry. Now, any questions anybody has? I talked way too much. Anybody? Pat, yes sir.
The other day in the statement, that journal, there was an article about problems with China and trade with China.
Yeah.
And the response by our two Democratic senators was, what we need is more conversation.
Huh.
What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, China, you know, I had a young man live with me for a year ago, or last year, for a year. He's from Beijing, China. His parents were professors at the University of China, or Beijing, I guess it is. And he came here to go to the same school my sons go to. And interesting, his name was Zakao, but when he came here, he took the name of Tony, and I thought it was interesting, a Chinese boy with an Italian name. But that's what he wanted, and that's what we called him. China is certainly on the move, and what China is doing today, China, when they sell something to America, okay, and they bring American dollars back, China captures those American dollars, and then they give that person Chinese dollars. So they're printing money like crazy, and they want that. They want their currency to be the currency of the world instead of the dollar. That's what they're doing. You know, I would have to get into a little more detail on that particular subject matter, be able to articulate what I would think we should do there. But we've got to really pay attention to China, because not only are they building the international manufacturing base of the world, because they don't have any raw material. They're taking timber from here, they're taking hay from here, they're taking any kind of minerals, any kind of raw material from here, and they're going over there and converting that, because they understand manufacturing is the basis of their whole economy. So that's what they're trying to do. So China really does want to control the currency, and they want to control the markets of the world. We've got to really pay attention to that, Pat, and make sure that we are a low-cost producer, and we can do that because we have all the energy here as far as water and natural resources, and we need to really take a look at our tax structure and make sure that we're competitive. But we really need to think about America and think about our own economy. So I hope I don't know if I answered it correctly, but I answered it the best I know. So
It's good enough.
okay, yes sir.
I have a question. You know, 2010 was a really good year for Republicans, but despite that, the Scripture what are you going to do differently to reduce the margin, or at least make it?
Okay, and that's I've thought a lot about that particular question. All right, what am I going to do? You know, Scott Brune last time was certainly the chosen one from the Republican Party, and he certainly had I referred to him as a show horse, and I'm the workhorse, so a little bit different in our strategies. But one of the things that I've always heard is perception is reality. All right. And my campaign is based on, my purpose of my campaign is to challenge that reality. Okay? And one of the things that I have noticed about politicians, they don't either tell you the truth or they don't tell you the whole truth. Okay? Now right now it's election time, so he's stouting, you know, he's saying I'm a blue dog. Well, let's take a look at that. The first 2 years he voted with the Democratic Party 97% of the time. He also says he walks across the aisle, by the way, and talks to his Republican colleagues. Now after this election cycle, he's voting with the Democratic Party 77% of the time, 78% of the time. We're about 80% of the time. So 97, he's certainly voting with his party virtually every vote. And now, 80% of the time, he's still voting with them. And then he says that delta between those two is the blue dog. Well, I don't think so. And let's test his walking across the aisle statement. The most controversial bill that was passed was what they call the Obamacare. And now you had every Republican that did not vote for that bill. And then the Democrats voted for that. Now, if he's the kind of person that always listens to the other side and walks across the aisle, I would think it would cause him to have pause when no Republican voted for that bill, that 2,700-page bill. If he truly was one that is bipartisan, I'd say, time out, folks. Let's take a look at this, because they must know something that I don't know. I mean, that's the way I would look at it. And let me stop and say, let's see what we can do about finding out what's in this bill that they don't like. Now, I think they knew about that, I think but he didn't care. He didn't care. And so they'll say one thing during election time, and they'll do something else, when it's when they're not looking for votes. The voters pamphlet just came out, and one of the things he says, Kurt does not believe that corporations are people. He has proposed a constitutional amendment to limit the influence of special interests in our elections. Okay, that's what he says. All right, so then you look it up. Who's his contributors? We've got American PAC, Honeywell Corporation, Abbott Corporation, American Crystal Sugar Corporation, the Blue Dog PAC, New Democrats Coalition, the Plumbers and Pipefitters Union. Now these are all special interests as far as I'm concerned. American Association for Justice. It goes to Berkshire Hathaway, so there we go. Warren Buffett. Comcast Corporation, Democrats Against Waste and Government PAC. It's all special interests. I don't have any of these people contributing to me. So I'm saying he wants a constitutional amendment against this. You know what it takes to get a constitutional amendment? All right? So, perception is reality. The perception is that he's doing this. What is the reality? The reality is that he's accepting the money. So, what is it, folks? What is it? It's not mine. It's not my statement. It's not my contributors. I'm just reading to you what's out there. What did I say? It's my purpose to challenge that reality. It's what he says, what he does. Okay? To answer your question, that's what the campaign's about. What he says and what he does. I think he's a fine person, but I think he's over his head. I don't think he has the skill set, the knowledge base, to bring Oregon back where it needs to be. In my life, when my country's in trouble, I show up. When some joint school board shut down because they were going bankrupt, I showed up. The country's going bankrupt, I'm showing up. It's your responsibility to get me elected. I'm doing what I need to do. You need to do what you need to do. Who's got the next one? Yes, sir.
Yeah. do to blunt some of the stranglehold that the environmental lobby has on all three branches of our government?
The environmental group, and this is interesting because, and I'm not, you know, the Democrats have their strategy with union money and environmental and special interest group money. The Republicans had theirs with, and I heard all my whole life, the Rockefeller Group and then you know, the Country Club Republicans. So the Democrats responded to that with unions and special interest money. So what you have now today is that you have politicians, and the unions, I don't have a problem with unions, folks. I don't have a problem with them. I think they're very good capitalist business people. I think they have put their money on politicians that will give them what they want, so they purchase those people. And then they also get assigned to the table, so they kind of voted, they're debating against themselves over these contracts. That's just good business policy. You know, you're going to take care of your members or your shareholders. So that's what they've done. But the environmentalists are not about the environmental people. I mean, I think radio had showed us about that. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. And I think that in order to control that, if we're really concerned about the environmental aspects of it, let's solve the environmental problem, but let's take the money out of it. Because I think once you dry up the money, you also dry up all of these lawsuits that they have. And I think we need to take a hard look at that. I think, you know, if we're damaging the environment, let's fix it. But if they're in business to get into our state treasurer or federal treasurer and make money off of this thing, then what's the true purpose of these groups? And I think we need to take a real hard look at that.
It's not the environment, you know that.
You know, I have had a lot of EPA that have showed up at a lot of mills that were there for either boiler mac or they're there for particulate. And they didn't know what a baghouse was, they didn't know what a cyclone was, they did not know what the boiler looked like. And I had one in Michigan told me one time that wrote a ticket on us, you know, and give us I forget what we call it, a violation. And I said, well, what did we violate? And they said odor. I said, well, how did you measure the odor? So I rolled down the middle and I smelled it. I said, let me see the certification on your nose to see what level it was. But, you know, that was the kind of stuff that they showed up. Of course, we challenged that and we won, but it cost us a lot of time and a lot of money. But sometimes these folks think that they're the sheriff in town. And that's why I'd like to change. I think we need to look at the environment, but I'd like to change it instead of environmental protection, environmental partnership. And I say partnership is it's not their purpose to run people out of business. It's their purpose to help solve problems. So we have a partnership, and that's what it is. And I think Newt Gingrich called it environmental solutions. I don't see a lot of solutions coming out of them. I think there's some good that they can do. But it should be a partnership to help keep businesses going. And if they could be somebody who goes and sees something in one state, captures that information, and be able to transfer it to the industry in another state. I think that's more what the purpose. We need to come together, not split us apart. And that's what they've been doing for too long. They've been divide. White versus black, rich versus poor, red versus blue. We need to come together as Americans. And the Environmental Protection Agency, or I say Environmental Partnership Agency, needs to think about they have some ownership. If you're going to find a company and shut them down, you need to go tell every employee and every mom and every child that you're taking their job away. You need to face up to that. That's pretty serious stuff. That's pretty serious stuff. We've got over 20% of people unemployed. And by the way, in Marion County alone, we spend $10 million a month on food stamps. $10 million a month in Marion County alone on food stamps. And that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. We got a lot of people that are hurting. We need to stop that. That's what I'm all about, by the way, getting jobs going. Who's got another question? Anybody got it? We got one in the back, that lovely young lady back there.
You need the major contrast between you and the other Republican that's running in
Her name is Karen Bowerman. She's been in Oregon about 2 years. She was a professor down in San Bernardino, California. Her husband's also in a PhD, and he was a professor. She moved here because 3 of her 4 children moved here. I think she's redefining the greeters program to move to Oregon and then to run for Congress to tell you how to do it. I think if her kids would have moved to Nevada, she'd probably been running against Harry Reid. But you know, she's a fine lady. But she's, as I defined it in that Statesman thing the other day, I said Kurt Schrader and her, their whole focus and the way they run their business is all based on process. It's all about process. And that's basically what professors do, is all about process. And I'm all about results. That's what drives me, is results. Get the federal government over timberland, open that back up, get people working again, support our schools, support our teachers, you know, get people off of, you know, in the state, get everybody working again, is where I'm at. And if the unemployment was, and when I went to grad school, it was 3% was considered full employment, and we had 3%, I wouldn't be here. You know, I got other things I'd like to do too, but I'm here because I show up when there's a problem. So anyway, so you got the hook out.
Well, one of the things I was going to say, I can't think of the name of the town, but as you go up into Washington on Portland, there's that big shopping center and shopping mall place. That is the only, and there's a couple of old logging mills that still take the grade through street. And that's where my clients are having to haul their logs out of Sweet Home. This is all private land, they're logging them, and they're having for generations, because they have these giant farms. So that what happens is, you know, the people in Portland just love smog. So here's all these log trucks coming down out of Sweet Home, heading up into Washington, stuck on the bridges in the freeway in downtown Portland, spewing all this wonderful air out of the engines, you know, so that they have all this smog. And that's the very thing the Portlanders don't like. And the very thing that they've set up by taking rid of all the logging and the mills that are down here, between them, just in the path of all of that.
Well, the timber industry, I computerized the first wood products mill in the United States in Eugene, Oregon. And the computer industry has given us the intelligence to be able to really turn that industry around and be able to be a leader in the environmental movement, and it truly is. And you know, I'm proud to have been part of that, you know. And it's just an industry that has gotten a bad rap here over the spotted owl. And by the way, there was never a chainsaw that ever killed a spotted owl. We found that out. It's another owl trying to kill a spotted owl. Sounds like the Israelis in Palestine, right? It's kind of nature's version of getting even. And so it's, you know, and then what are we doing? We're out there with shotguns trying to kill the other owl. Let them settle their argument, whatever it is. That's, we want to be environmentally correct. That's the way to be environmentally correct. Stay out of it. And I'll tell you, these windmills and the solar, and by the way, I was on a board of a company, we had a lot of solar stuff. The windmills kill about 2 birds a year, and last year they killed about 80,000 birds across the country. And you're not hearing anything about that. And those windmills too are undersized. You know, going back to my engineering days, they're undersized. They're going to be exactly like the courthouse square. They're going to cost you, in about 10 years, it's going to cost you millions of dollars to maintain those things, because you consume about as much electricity as they produce. And the solar panels are only good for about 7.5 or 8 years, and you know, we normally depreciate them out over a 10-year cycle. So those, you know, and those things don't produce any electricity at nighttime. And the windmills the wind only blows 30% of the time. Now, I'm not saying we don't do that. I'm thinking there's an area that you can do that if you don't have a power distribution. And I built power plants before, by the way. I built one up in Spokane for a Vista Corporation, 26.5 megawatt power plant, gas turbine. But so I understand that industry. But you know, those are the kind of things that it feels good. You know, that's part of this thing. It feels good. We spend, I don't know how many millions of dollars. We get all kinds of tax credits. And then we've got people that are can't get a job and they're on food stamps. Where's our priorities in our government? They're wrong. I'm not saying you don't do it, I'm just saying the timing's all off. And we're going broke. So this is more than a recession, this is a depression that we're going through.
You know, some people, those environmentalists, I have always wondered, I don't know enough about it, perhaps someone could give me. The environmentalists want things like recycling. I live out in the country and I have a pretty nasty, over 5 acres there that I like all my little critters and creatures that run through there. What happens to the little animals and the plants under those solar panels? They're not gonna get any water coming down. It's, you know, it's just become this denuded area.
You're absolutely right. I see it up here at 205 and I-5 where they have all those panels laid out. Well, they're covering that ground. You know, what happened to that ground underneath it doesn't, you know? I mean, they're doing it because it's, I don't know. It feels good, I guess. That's something, you know? But when you really, there we go, perception versus reality. Our challenge is to look at the reality. What is the reality of these things? Are they really what they're supposed to be? Courthouse Square is a good example of a government running something, and we've been building buildings ever since the pyramids, right? We've been building, that thing didn't last 10 years. And that's gonna cost this county, it cost them $35 million to build it. It's probably gonna cost them, to get that thing fixed up, I say somewhere pushing 75 to 100 million bucks. And look what's going on. And that's because we have people in government that don't know what they're doing, they just happen to have the power. And that's a very good example. I think they ought to make it a museum for bad policy, and bad politicians. You know, you could have the pedophile window, you could have this and that, you know, I mean, go on and on and on. So anyway. Pardon me? That was managed by the government. Because I've been in a few meetings and been there. It was built by a private company, it's contracted by a private company, but the whole process, the engineering, they didn't check it, they ran out of money, they thought they could do it, and they built it and had the ribbon cutting, and then they're all gone. I talked to the guy that was in charge of that. I said, you ever read the project manager's logbook? He didn't even know the project manager was supposed to have a logbook. I said, that's admissible in court. Every day a project manager, I run a lot of projects, every project manager keeps a logbook daily, what goes on, who showed up, what they did, blah, 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 you know, it's just a diary. And I said, have you ever read that? Because he says, I don't know what happened. I said, you ever read that book? Didn't even know they had it. Now, come on, and he was a government official. Come on.
Anyway, before you run away.
And I got a meeting at 1:30, so I got to slip on the last three numbers. 915, 915.
Yeah, I got it.
Hey, all right.
It's right here between 114 and 16.
Thank you, Fred. Now, listen, you guys got to take one of these envelopes that says that you're going to send money to Fred so that he can make a decision. Huh?
If you like, you know, if everybody's in a different position, so you can find it, you can't, that's understandable.
We'll give it to somebody who can. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. How do we do, Jeff? All right.
Good talk, Fred.
Pardon me?
Good.
Oh, thank you. Try to get, they tell me I'm getting better this time than I did last time, which I should, right? You want to always get better, right?
That's right.
Always want to improve. I've been married 22 years, and I'm still making some dumb mistakes, but my wife's working on it, so.
Still hope.
Yeah, still hope. I
See
love
you
that
guys
hope
May
to death,
17th.
By the way, if I get elected in the 50th Congressional District, my wife said this the other day, you know that everybody got elected there, they get the divorce. I says, don't have to worry about that. I says, if that happened, everybody going to my funeral, because you're gonna have to kill me. I'm not gonna divorce you, I'm not gonna divorce you, just kill me. So I'm ready to do that if she wants to get rid of me.
What can we say?